All right, hopefully you guys can see this. I don't have a fancy camera holder, but this is a Ford PowerStroke 6.4 cluster out of a 2008. So the goal is to make a bridge, kind of the same one I made for my Ram, but this would convert a Cummins to a Ford 6.4. So what this entails is replacing the 6.4 ECM with the microcontroller. The microcontroller will then emulate the 6.4 ECM, as well as emulating a RAM from 2006 to 2024. So it doesn't matter if you have an 849B, 21, 2200, 2350, or 2450. The goal is to prevent you from having a Mickey Mouse jury rig calibration where you basically turn everything off. This is going to emulate the vehicle, so it should work pretty much out of the gate. All you'd have to do is disable the immobilizer. So what I'm kind of demonstrating here is just controlling the cluster, nothing too fancy. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of the functions just to give you guys an idea. So this doesn't have the Ford ECM, this has one of my controllers communicating to it. So this one right here should be the water and fuel. Oops, I gotta connect to it. And then the next one is your glow plugs, which will also be your grid heater indicator. And then there's a bunch of functions. I'm not 100% sure how it applies, but you can have a cool down timer. This one says 30 seconds to shut down. And then once it's shut down, let's say it's turning the engine off. And I can probably actually automate that, a lot of this. So take the input from your ignition, and then the controller starts the truck. When you pull or remove your key from the ignition, then it goes through the shutdown. So kind of like a turbo timer. Engine warming. And then you have OK to drive. Stop safety now. Which most people probably don't care about, but you also have cleaning exhaust filter. You have drive to clean exhaust system. You have cleaning exhaust filter. And then stuff that actually matters. You got your reduced engine power, so you know your engine's in limp mode. You have your diagnostic check engine light. You have your check engine light flashing. Battery charge indicator. You have your wrench indicator. Loose fuel cap. Cruise control indicator. Change engine oil soon. Oil change required. Your boost pressure, so this is 5 pounds. £10. Oops. Do 20 pounds. 30 pounds. And 40 pounds. Okay, your coolant temperature. Oh, I went a little too high on that, whoops. And then obviously, you know, you got your engine RPM, so you can do 500. Do 2,500. And go all the way up to 5,000. You can actually go to 5,500 is the max this thing will actually read to. I wasn't able to get it to actually produce anything higher than that, so if you want to do 5,500. I guess you can call it the slightly extended scale. Back down. And then also you have your vehicle speed. And this also has an extended scale too. Can't remember what the max was on it, but you can go. That's a 120, 130 miles an hour, something like that, 180 kilometers. But so the goal is, you know, everyone now, they have all this different stuff, right? You have these pedal conditioners, you're keeping a 6.4 ECM, you know, the Cummins doesn't talk to your 5R, so you have torque issues going to the transmission. You get dead pedal, your dash doesn't actually fully work. So the goal behind this is, you know, you're going to get a controller that's going to have the same connectors as your 6.4 ECM. It's going to slide into the same cubbyhole in the firewall as a 6.4 ECM. The 58 pin connectors on your firewall is going to connect right to it. That leaves the 98 way. The 98 way is actually going to go down to the Cummins. Now, it doesn't matter if you have, like I said, a 2006 all the way up to a 2024. If you look at my channel, you'll see I have a 2019 5th gen CM2450B ECM and engine running in my 2006, and it passes emissions. Granted, it passes under the 5.9, not the 2019 emissions. But you know, all your functions will work. You don't have to have all these adapters. You'll be able to get your cruise control working. You'll be able to get your AC working. Your grid heater light obviously will populate all the stuff I showed you right here. I can make the exhaust brake work based off the tow haul mode, but in my truck, because it's newer, you know, you have full brake and auto brake. So I actually have a rocker switch with 2 LEDs, and you tap up or tap down, doesn't matter. It goes from off to full auto, then off again, which in my opinion is the better way of doing it. And then you still retain your tow haul. The cool thing about this is you'll be able to swap to 68 or the ASIN, depending on which one you want, and your cluster will still work, your tow haul will still work, all your forward functions will still work as if that's still a 5R. If you want to keep your 5R, also not a big problem. This controller is emulating the engine, the actual 6.4 ECM, right? Which is why all the clusters are going to work. So as far as the TCM and the vehicle is concerned, you still have a 6.4. So your torque, your RPM, your speed, your throttle position, all that's going to get converted from the Cummins back to the Ford. So all your functions are going to work. You don't have to have any crazy tuning on your TCM to make the 5R work behind the Cummins. It's going to see the torque, it's going to see all that information. But yeah, no, just thought I'll share something I've been wanting to do for a few years, and then kind of decided to put a little effort behind it, and then hopefully end of the year, early next year, you know, if anyone is getting ready to do a swap, it doesn't matter if it's 2450, 2350, 21, 2200, 849. I prefer the 23 and 2450 ECMs. You would basically just have, well, doesn't really matter. In all of these applications, you'd have a pretty simple harness. I'm not a big fan of the older motors where the connectors were kind of branched out on the motor between the vehicle and the engine. The newer motors generally just have one connector for the engine for Cummins, and then you have a second connector that's for the OEM for the vehicle manufacturer. In that case, you literally would just have one connector going to your 96 way from the ECM to the 96 way or 98 way on the controller, and your truck's wired. If you can bolt this in, you'd be able to do the wiring in like 15 minutes. And then and you'll have a user interface and everything, so you can type in your VIN number and calibrate your pedal and all that jazz. But yeah, no, thanks for watching.